Look at me, I'm fully charged, and when slightly aroused, my dick is large. Listen up, you ignorant pigs. Put down your crack pipes and your beer bongs, your storm-surging Robotrons and your Wraith Knight laser people. It's time to go into the temporal warp with Holy Diver, and we're going to be looking at the Vampire Counts, 2003. So, early this year I got it into my head that I wanted to do a new project, an Undead project, mostly because of Warlords of Erehwon. It's a skirmish-based game, but because I kind of missed having another fantasy army around. I have a couple that I still have from the old days, and I wanted to make it a complete set. I think I have one neutral faction, one good faction, and then I have two evil factions, one of which will be the Vampire Counts. Now, a little bit about this book. This is my second army ever. This cover is just way too cool to overlook. I was like, wow, look at this. And back at the time, when this book came out, I was probably about 17, and I should have, if anything, I should have been mowing more lawns and bagging less groceries, because I undertook a very expensive endeavor. So this book was written by Alessio Capator back in 2003, and I think I picked myself up a copy in about 2004, maybe 2005 when I got this book. But this book was always in the hobby shop, but I had been collecting some of the Undead from Games Workshop before I ever picked up the book. And this is it. I mean, they've got the terrain. They have a little thing in here called let's see, right here, Shades of Death. I think that's awesome. I mean, just the way they worded everything. But, in my local area, Vampire Counts weren't like a strong tournament faction. I did see them at tournaments, and a lot of people had hideous results with them. Let's find out why. We're going to go to the showcase, and we're going to see what I painted. So let's just start with the core units. We're going to start with zombies, and we're going to look at their buddies, the skeletons, just a little bit. Zombies and skeletons. Skeletons rock in at 11 points if they're carrying light armor and a shield. That's way too expensive because you're supposed to have a lot of these, so I wouldn't even waste my time there if I'm running a Blood Dragon list with zombies and skeletons, because the whole point is to deliver the Blood Dragon Vampire into combat. So for what I'm thinking in my first little 2,000 point game, I'm going to have at least, I want to say, 800 points in special. That's where I'm putting my points, and I'm gonna have about 240 points in core. And you're asking me, how do I do that? Well, in this book, the 2003 book that I had in my hand, bat swarms are core. I don't see anything that says that they don't count as core, and wolves and ghouls are core. So I could run some of these zombies off as ghouls, and I get 5 ghouls, 40 points. That's the minimum unit, and there you go. I could rock in on about 240 points worth of core, and nothing's gonna stop me. But that's the zombie regiment. I've got about 35 done. There's gonna be 50 altogether. And as for skeletons, I have 2 more boxes that look like that, and I couldn't find the chunky ones from back in the day that were plastic, and I was afraid to buy the ones that were online that they have in a box of 5, because I wasn't sure if they came with hand weapons. So that's just something that I strayed away from. Next we come to the dire wolves. Nothing special on these guys, but there are about 6 of them in a unit, and they're 10 points apiece. They're fast, and if they start within marching distance of my general, which is 12 inches, I can push these guys out 18, and the Black Knights can follow, and I can use these guys to block a charge or get shot at. And if they don't get shot at, I can land, since they're fast cavalry, I can reform them and charge any way I want. Basically, I can put these guys out in a little lance formation or in a straight line and just hold up a war machine. Let's see here, I got 1 Doom Wolf. Nothing, oh, gotta bring him back. Nothing spectacular about him, other than he's just pewter and has a different looking face. And that's the dire wolves. They're just chaff units because, again, for blood dragons, you want to deliver knights, and you gotta deliver the king here. You have a White Lord right here, and you have to deliver him with the Curse Book and a Vampire into a unit, win that close combat fight, and move on. And I think that's how you win your bacon there. Next, we have bats and fell bats. The bat swarms are some of my favorites. These little guys, these little ee. That's the noise they make and everything. You can bring 2 bases. That's literally just right there. That's 120 points, and 6 wolves at 10 points apiece. It's 60, 120. That's 240. That's all my core that I'm probably going to be rocking, because the blood dragons aren't real good spellcasters. I can raise the dead if I'm lucky. If I'm a level 2 guy, I generate 1 less power dice. So level 2's so I'm going to generate 1 level. Basically, my magic phase is going to be shit. I might want to make sure I have the Necromancer as a scroll caddy. And so like 800 points in characters, 800 points in, and so 1600 points in characters, 1600 points in special. And that's how that's going to rock out there. But that's basically the felled little bats here. Let's see if we can get a better look at these guys just a bit. Yeah, that's them. And then next to them, we have the fell bats. Now these guys, they're really, really hard to photograph, because they just come in these one static pose. I wish they had some of these things swooping in on people, and it's just, I don't know. I really don't know. These guys are just, they're hard to look at, but the good thing about them is they're only 20 points. You bring 6 of them, that's more than enough to overwhelm every war machine on the table. 6 of them in a unit, you just plug them in. They've got 2 attacks apiece, and war machines usually have low leadership unless they're dwarves. Dwarves will probably fight them off, but it'll take them a couple turns, and that's a couple turns of the organ gun not firing at me. I don't know if I'll encounter a dwarf player, but I have 4 armies, and I know that a couple of one of my friends is actually interested in coming over and giving this old fantasy game a whirl. So that's kind of why I'm doing this, mostly for my benefit. But yeah, these are them. I just have 6, and that's where I'm going with this. But let's get to the good parts of this army. The Vampire Count and his Night Bus. Now these guys, completely cool. I can't wait to see them out on the field and how they're going to move and everything. This is probably going to be my Banner of Doom unit. It's going to be this right here. If I have with everything in it, just without the Vampire Count, that's about 440 points worth of special, and that's 1 drop. And then I can bring a unit of 10 and maybe another unit of 10. I think that the reason for at least 30 Black Knights on the table is that I need to get up into combat, deliver the Vampire, and start wrecking heads. Otherwise, I'm not going to win. All of my points are in characters, and that was another weakness of this book. Was all of your points was in characters. It was all in special, because you only had 2 specials that did any actual close combat, and that was Graveguard and Black Knights. And the problem is, if you were to, let's say if I were to get a skeleton unit in base contact with the enemy, with the Black Knights, well, the enemy's just going to swing at the skeletons. If the enemy has a higher initiative, they're just going to kill skeletons, and they're going to get free combat resolution, which kills Black Knights. That was another weakness. People didn't, I'm going to go out on a limb and say they did not understand that weakness, and I'm underlining that. They did not understand that weakness when playing Undead in these days. That you could just lose the game because of combat resolution. And I think a lot of people hated it. But, you know, if a unit gets eviscerated in combat and gets ran down, and you take 20 minutes out of the game because that happens twice. Let's say it happens once to you, once to your friend, and then once again to you, and you lose the game because of that. You know, and you had an hour and a half of play time for a 2,000 point game. You had a good day. You had a good day. One good thing about this here, the Vampire Count comes on this old Barded Steed here, and I can't tell you how much I like that model. This is just,
heavy pewter horse, heavy pewter guy. I'm in the Capes pewter. It's just, I also did a good job on the skin tone for his face, you know, and I just, I'm also going, at a great expense to me, I'm going to buy like as many as I can of this kit whenever I see it on eBay, simply because I just want the steed. I have about 8 loose Black Knights from this range right here, the 1998 range, that quite literally 8 Black Knight will go on those steeds, and they'll probably be my Grail Knights, because you can play Undead Bretonnian and ride them out in Lance formation. But yeah, this would be my Banner of Doom unit. That's the 5+ ward save against all missiles. So they did give you some ways to deliver yourself. 5+ ward save, 2+ armor, toughness 4, pretty decent. You guys probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but there's a profile shot of that unit, and just, God, that's scary looking. Bunch of these guys. Little design, little tip in assembling these guys. I'm just gonna get out the standard bearer here. You turn him around. Now, what you're gonna notice here is how seamless this kind of blends into the stick blends into the cloak here, where his leg touches. I drilled a hole there, and I filled that hole with glue, and that's how I got 1 point of glue, 2 point of glue. One on the arm because the arm is socketed, and one down here. That's called a King's Notch. I coined the term myself. The King's Notch, basically, for anybody carrying a lance, that basically gives me 2 points of glue, and it's less likely that the arm will just fall off in transport, and that's what I did for that. And then on the musician itself, he's got 2 points of glue, one on the face and one in the arm socket. Reason why I glued the horn to his face, because if you make the horn touch his face with just a little bit of glue there, it's going to be a little bit more stable. Plus, you always want 2 points of contact on glue for a pewter appendage. So that's basically it with the Vampire Count Showcase. We're just gonna move. We got our Necromancer and our Vampires on foot. I think those guys up there might be the beginning of my Von Karsteins. I'm not sure. I think my Von Karsteins might be running with, they might be running with the Black Knights. I did buy Manfred. I think he might be the only Von Karstein vampire that I run. And the reason for that is he's like a 700 point character by himself, and he can pretty much do it all. Let's take one look at the other unit here. It's just a unit of 6. I have 30 painted. There's 2 on my table that aren't showcased. It's just another musician and a spear dude, and then I have 5 left to paint. I figured I needed at least 35 Black Knights. Then once I hit that, I'm going to be painting skeletons. Get down there on them. It's the other unit of 10. It'll either be 3 units of 10, 1 unit of 6, for what I'm going to be running, because I could probably use one just a simple bare bones unit of 6 as a chaff unit for my Black Knights. But again, like I said, it's a hard army to control. It was always, you know, I always hated it when people would just disagree with me when I told them not to buy Vampire Counts as their first army. But, you know, I mean, what do I know? Especially back then, what did I know? Well, I knew enough that it was a very hard army to play. You were better off doing Tomb Kings, because you could bring like 60 archers and all, and Quileta or what, Shanae or whatever her name was, and all of your shots would go out. They were poisoned and they automatically hit on 5s. So I was like, I brought 60 archers, and when you're getting close to me, I'm going to feed you a bone giant. I'm going to feed you a bone giant. Here's a scorpion. Here's a scorpion. Ah, it looks like I won. All right. But, you know, that was just the Tomb Kings end of it. The Vampire Counts, I think, had a lot more class just because of the Blood Dragon line, and that's basically the first bloodline that I'm going to be sporting here. And, of course, he's wearing the flayed Hallberg. That was made popular by Dracula in 1992. He wore that red armor, which was pretty awesome. And, you know, the reason why you always see, like, Dracula as a theme in this is because of Christopher Lee and the Hammer films. I mean, these Rick Priestley, Alessio Cavatore, and the people who designed some of these books were 10 years older than me in some cases, I think. Maybe 20 years older than me, and they were age appropriate for all of the Christopher Lee Dracula movies. And if you go back to the late 70s and 80s, and you were living in England, your late nights would be filled up with Hammer horror. And now I heard TV in England has gotten even worse because there's nothing else to watch but Doctor Who and Top Gear. And you got the death announcer on the left-hand side of the screen having a seizure. But if you were to watch Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, Dracula, the horror of Dracula, and The Scars of Dracula, or Dracula, Prince of Darkness, every single one of these movies uses a coach, and it was a coach that picked up the Jonathan Harker, solicitor, from the Borgo Pass, and it's this spectral coach, but Christopher Lee commanded that coach a lot, and he was always on top whipping the shit out of the horses to get that thing to go faster. And I think that's why they have a black coach carrying a vampire in every single edition. It's because the people who were there writing for Games Workshop back in the day probably did play a little bit of Castlevania in the 80s. And they definitely watched Hammer movies in the late 70s, early 80s, and probably well into the 90s. But, yep, that's my little army. Not bad for a toy. The next thing I'm going to have in works are these guys. Let me just get this over here, because I'm probably taking up too much time again. Had to redo this video a couple times. These are the let's get these guys way back. These are the 1996 skeletons, and they're the pewters. I got these at a considerable cost. Don't ask what I paid for them. That's actually from the plastic kit there. I got 3 command groups, so I didn't build any commands with the plastic skeletons that you see featured right there. I didn't buy any commands. So these guys are going to be next on the chopping board with the spirit hosts. I'm thinking I might just do the shields black, but I got to freehand something on the shields or something. I don't know what I'm going to do. But yeah, these guys probably quite literally the best skeleton ever sculpted by Games Workshop. I mean, just look at this guy. This is your champion. This is your unit champion. I could use this guy as a White King if I had to. And that's basically it. Thanks for watching. Well, in any case, I hope you enjoyed going into the Temporal Warp with me. As you know, YouTube has many features you can use to interact with me. You can like the video, dislike the video, comment, or subscribe. But until then, let's keep retro blasting and stay metal, my friends.